the time of the year where we're going to be getting back outside, improving our yards, maybe doing some spring cleaning in and outside of our homes, and often that involves a lot of water. We want to conserve this vital resource that we have a plentiful amount of here in Oakland County and around the state of Michigan, but there are certain steps we can take that both help us not only with our water resources, but with our water bill as well. Joining us now is the Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner, Jim Nash. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Good morning. Glad to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on as we are into the season where a lot of people are going to be using a lot more water regularly for activities, for cleaning, for so many other regular activities around their home as well. And so that always comes back to the topic of conservation. And the first place we often look, and the place that's been looked at a lot lately as we've now headed out of Fix a Leak Week, are leaks in our home where water can not only cause damage, but can also be kind of harmful as well.
Oh, they certainly can. I mean, if it's a bad leak in your home, it can eventually bother your structure of your house if you're not careful. So, I mean, it can raise your bill. We've seen cases where somebody had a significant leak under their house, didn't know it, and they got a $2,000 bill. So these kind of things do happen. For most people, leaks tend to be smaller things that just raise your water bill more than it should be. And for toilets, things like that, you might not even know it's happening at all. So this is making people aware of it is really important. The EPA has a significant amount of resources on their website around this. My office does too. My office website is oakgov.com/water. If you go up there and search the site, you can find a bunch of things around that. Sometimes we have things on the front page. Again, an easy way to find out if your toilet is having issues is put a couple of drops of food coloring in the tank above the toilet. If you come back 10 minutes later and there's some discoloration in the tank, I'm sorry, in the pot of the toilet, that means that you've got a leak. And so it's usually a flapper or something inside the tank that causes that. You can go down to the hardware store and get a part and fix it yourself. It's really pretty easy. Or call a plumber. That's the biggest, most common issue we have is toilets. But again, it's in the leaking of the system itself, when you're outside, the mains in the street, when there's a leak in that, trust me, it develops into a sinkhole pretty rapidly because it's under pressure and it just eats out the dirt around it. So if you have a wet spot in your yard coming from the street, it could be a potential leak. And in your house, those are the ones that really are the ones that people can be aware of.
Yeah, and this all comes back to conservation, and within conservation being such a broad terminology, prevention of waste of that water. Because as you said, those leaks can build over time, and look, it may be one drip at a time, but you think about a drip every few seconds. That's a lot of water throughout one day, throughout 1 week, throughout 1 month, and so on and so forth. So in terms of waste, when you do have these leaks or you do have these other issues where water is seeping out in or outside of your home, just how much water can we end up wasting from something that seems so minor?
Oh, sure. I was reading a thing that's from the EPA actually that said that 5 drops a minute ends up being 500 gallons a month, which is way more than people would think. So yeah, that is an issue. One of the things that most systems use now are the water meters have a little piece on them that shows a water faucet. So if you shine a flashlight on the top of your meter, if you see little drops coming from that means that the water is running 24 hours a day, which means you have a leak. So there is a way you can find out right from your own meter if you have a house with a more modern water meter, to be able to tell yourself right away. And my office operates 22 communities, water and sewer services. So we know that we can collect that data from the homes of folks and show whether they're having a leak. And we're working on that as a means of actually on their bill, we can put a little notice that says, we detect you have a leak in your house. So This is something we're working on. Hopefully, in the next year or so, we'll have that as a resource that we can use, and other communities can do that too. So there's ways of notifying and ways of finding out yourself if you have a leak in your home, and I would really encourage folks to do that.
More information on the Water Resources Commissioner's office and their resources can be found on oakgov.com/water or on Facebook at Water Resource OC. Lots of helpful information, infographics, and more. And of course, tons of advice on how you can conserve water better in your home, especially now as we're in the spring season and people are going to be getting back outside. What we often also hear about this time of the year, Jim, is people doing their spring cleaning. Whether it is indoors or outdoors, it often involves not only our water, but also cleaning products and other materials, all of which can affect our waterways. What are some of the common problematic practices that may seem harmless when you're doing them, but could actually have a big impact on our water and our water systems?
Well, sure. There's several things that do that. When we're putting things into the drains, we just have to remember that all this goes down into a sewer system and ends up in the water at some point. Even medicines, things like that, you should not wash them down the toilet. So really, there's several ways of looking about how we use what we use. One of them is if anybody has a sprinkler system in their system, an irrigation system from their house water into their garden, they should be getting an inspection every 5 years to make sure that there's a backflow preventer. Backflow preventers mean that if there's a problem with the water pipe and it loses pressure, there's potential that it could pull water back out of the ground into the water system, which would mean bacteria, all the things that are in the earth. So that's something that we have to make sure that we have backflow preventers. So if there is an accident with the water mains, we won't be polluting the water. Generally speaking, if we have a water main problem, we fix it. We give a boil water notice. That means nobody should use their water unless they boil it before use. So then we have to test it to make sure that there's no bacteria in that water, and we have to have 48 hours worth of testing. So this is part of what we do to protect our water supplies is make sure that backflow preventers are on everything. Some of them have, water furnaces can have a backflow preventer on them, or even sump pumps under your house. Some of those have them. So we have to make sure that we're everything that potentially can contaminate the water is considered and can't backflow into it. Things such as most cleaners, and you had that picture just then. The EPA has a list of cleaners that are safe for water. I would really always look for that. Even things like fertilizers, if it has phosphorus or non-time released nitrogen, that has significant impacts. If you live near a lake or your water drains into a drain that goes to a lake, that's why we have large algae blooms in lakes that can cause a stop to swimming, and it's a danger to the fish. So those kind of things have an impact, and we'll have to be aware of those. And again, there's a lot of safety labels on fertilizers also that say whether they have phosphorus and time release nitrogen. So those are the kind of things that we protect against. And just people need to be aware that whatever they're putting into their sinks ends up in our systems.
Jim Nash is with us, Water Resources Commissioner from Oakland County, on today's edition of the Splash Live. More information, including some helpful info on how you can help protect our local waterways, can be found on oakgov.com/water or visit their Facebook page at Water Resource OC for even more information. And that also comes back to our pets, and you mentioned the fertilizers for the spring season as we're building our yards, but there's so much other forms of waste that can ultimately get into our waterways and ultimately have a major impact. That's a great point that you made too, that we're protecting our lakes, especially here in the greater West Bloomfield area where we're surrounded by so many major lakes and other water systems. Really good stuff to keep in mind. And Jim, affordability of our water is also something that's become more of an issue in recent years with economic issues and other distresses. We know here in Oakland County that there are a large sum of people that do have to live paycheck to paycheck or are struggling to pay their bills, including their water. But Michigan lawmakers are working on some things to help water affordability be a lot better at the local level, and that involves offices like yours and the county's.
Certainly, yeah. We've been working on this for several years now. When the pandemic hit, the state suspended shutoffs. So we couldn't shut anybody off. We worked with as many folks as we could, but a lot of folks allowed their bills to accumulate. So we had some real issues that we knew were going to develop as we came out of this. And all across the country, and I mean all across the state, because we're in Michigan, and the country significantly. There is issues because in Michigan, there's several things that are affecting what the price of water is going to be now and into the future. Just a few of them are really aging infrastructure. A lot of communities have significant water and sewer infrastructure that is very old and needs to be replaced. We also have significant issues with lead in pipes that we're going to have to be replacing. Now, that's a very hit and miss kind of issue. I live in Farmington Hills. We're not aware of any lead pipes in Farmington Hills. In Pontiac, which is just about the same size as Farmington Hills, they have about 8,000 of their 20,000 customers have lead pipes. So that's about 40% of the population. And just for Pontiac, we're looking at, unless we get outside help with grants, we've gotten some, of a 40% rate increase for the next 10 years to replace lead pipes by the new federal rule, which says we have to replace them all in 10 years. That's about $80 million over 10 years, $8 million a year. That's a 40% increase in their rates. That would be devastating to a lot of folks in that community. Already a little over a third have a really hard time affording their water. And with a 40% increase, that would be up into the 60%. Other communities around the state, around the county, are very affected by this, and we've recognized that we need some kind of larger program of affordability. We did a 2-year study with funding from the EPA, from funding from EGLE, the state environmental agency, that we did a countrywide study of all the attempts at affordability programs, and none of them have really worked because they weren't on a large enough scale. So what we've recognized is that we need to do this on a statewide scale. There's legislation in Lansing to do that. What this would do is we create a fund like is done with the Michigan Energy Assistance Program, MEAP, that was done under the previous Governor Snyder in 2012. So it's been in existence a significant amount of time. It's really dug into the problem of energy shutoffs. And we've modeled this after that. So with water shutoffs, the way it's done for the energy program is every metered household pays $2 a month into a fund that is then helps local governments, local utilities subsidize the bills for the low income folks. So we want to do this for water. It would be a $2 a month fee that everyone would pay into a fund. And then this would help commit to funding a subsidized subsidized water bill for low-income folks. And this would allow them to pay a bill because nobody wants to get their water free. They just can't afford it the way it's going and rising. So this would allow them to have a subsidized fee, and a lot of communities would tremendously benefit. Pontiac would be able to actually lower rates over time because they're spending so much to make up for folks who can't pay their bill. Every community has folks in it that can't pay their bill. Some communities have less, some more, but everybody has an issue, has communities, has folks with them that have an issue paying their bill. It's an immediate problem for health. If they lose their water, they have a real problem with disease, with sanitation, all those things. So that has an effect on families, but it also has an effect on the overall rates that people pay because they have to make up every year for the people that can't afford to pay those bills. So that's why bills go up more than they should every year, because there's some people that have to be made up for because they can't pay them. This is something that we've seen for a long time, and we recognize that we just can't keep going this way. And I think that this is a solution that really will work. It has worked with the energy sector, and I think it can work with us. We want to make sure we're shutting off as few people as we can. We don't want to shut
Yeah.
people off. We want to make sure they get the water and sanitation services they need. Without it, there's a real risk of health in their own homes and in the places they go to work. If they're sick, they can carry illnesses to their works. And all these have a payback in the long run if we stop doing that. And I think that this is something that really has a chance that would change us. We'd be the first state to do it, and I think we'd be an example state countrywide as to how it can be done in a way that's fair, but also effective to keeping everybody having their water.
Yeah, and our local area has been on the forefront of that. Your office formed a coalition with over 50 members, collaborating with over 30 organizations to try to look into this and see how this could be done in a way that's affordable for people that are in need of more affordable water resources in our communities throughout the state, but also in a way that isn't going to then hike the rates for everybody else. Commissioner Nash, before we let you go, anything else that we should know from the Water Resources Commissioner's office at this time?
Well, our office is working on a lot of questions that we need to answer. I talked about the old infrastructure and the lead in the service lines. The biggest thing that's affecting us in terms of long term is climate change. In our area, the Great Lakes Basin, climate change is mostly going to be very heavy storms that can travel fast. We've experienced that here. And it's just going to get more intense over time. So we're working on resiliency, building our systems so they can take these hard rains without damage more. And we're working on mitigation. My industry, water and sewer and stormwater, uses about 4% of all the energy in America to move and treat water. And we can instead create energy doing that. I'm working on a project that will take sewage solids and pull out the methane from them so that it's not going into the atmosphere and underground. And we'll be using that energy to run our facility instead of fossil fuels. And in the long run, we'll be able to create enough energy that we can start doing things like charging electric cars off of it and doing other things that we can start mitigating climate change through getting off fossil fuels. So I'm real proud of what we're doing in terms of like leading that way. We're one of the most advanced in the country right now. And we're looking for a grant to do something. We'd be the most advanced in the world for creating energy from sewage solids. And I think that's one of those things that in the long run, everybody that does sewage will end up doing and will get off of fossil fuels for our industry and start creating energy for the greater society.
A lot of important work being done out of Oakland County. It requires a lot of partnership between our Water Resources Commissioner's office and our local communities. That definitely on display of late. Commissioner Nash, thank you so much for your time.
Again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.